G'day listeners and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. We're the AFL Fantasy podcast that doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the players who are going to bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. My name's Heff and this week I am joined by Jake from Hat Chat. How you doing, mate?
Hello, mate. Thank you for having me back again.
Been a while. I think round 4 was the last podcast you did.
I was just thinking it must have been first 6 weeks of the season, and I think the boys were going pretty well by then. It's been a little bit downhill since.
I was going to say, how the boys going now?
Too many teams. This is the age-old problem of I love it, but I just invest far too many times, and something's got to drop away. And over the buys, it's very much been the keeper leagues. A few teams haven't played through, which is always handy. A few have, and I'll be honest, I don't know if everyone's had the same struggles, but the change of apps, just the use of a second app somehow diminishes my ability to just quickly open the draft side and make some changes. To open a second app, I just keep forgetting, which is completely on me.
I've got one league in the AFL Fantasy app and I do struggle to remember to make my changes. It's like, because you got to keep all my leagues from keeper, so it makes it a lot easier there because they're all in the one spot and it makes it easy. But it is what it is. We played through this year and we did the best, we did best 14 through bye rounds, which was kind of fun because it did, there was a few upset losses, but it's kind of was good about it. We had on the weekend, we had the top 2 teams lose to the bottom 2 teams on the weekend.
Huge.
Yeah, huge for my team as well because I pretty much I thought I'd cost myself top 2 spot last week by losing by a point. If you saw my SubSport story on Instagram.
I absolutely did. I got the whole video through and it was one of my more enjoyable ones, not at your expense, but the relatability, I think.
Definitely. Well, so anyway, so to kind of turn around this week, I had a huge win in my league against the team I think that was 4th at the time. And then caught up a heap of points on the top team, and the top 2 teams lost, so I'm back in the top 2, and it's back on.
Happy days. I think I'll be sliding into final spots. That's the game at the moment. I think rebuild for 2 of the leagues, very much a contender in one. I think I've finished top 4 comfortably, even with the lack of paying attention. Errol Goulden's back, and I've been missing Errol Goulden for the vast majority of the year, so on the up, heading into finals for that league. That's the most exciting one, I reckon.
I think Errol Goulden's a big factor for a lot of teams out there. And I think there's renewed faith for a lot of teams out there as well. They're sitting kind of, just outside the top 6 or the top 5 or whatever you play. He's back and he put up a big 120 on the weekend. So.
It was good. I know there'll be a few people talking, probably listeners asking questions on the Hat Chat pod tonight about him in Classic 2. But
true.
I think I had him in a single season. I pulled him, it was a late draft, so I managed to get him around 15 or something. He was still sitting there, so hoping for a nice strong run into finals there as well. Yeah,
fingers crossed for the owners out there. Well, we'll get stuck into the round review. Now, Thursday night was the Port Adelaide game. It's been noted my attendance at Port games has been kind of questioned lately. Kay's busted me leaving the game early before the Sydney game, which to be fair, I don't think I've stayed for a full game this whole season. But anyway, then Thursday night, had every intention to actually go to the footy, but had a mate over from Sydney. We caught up for dinner beforehand. There was about 3 or 4 mates there, 4 or 5 mates there, and thought about heading down to Adelaide, but as it was the time to leave, we kind of just decided, fuck it, we'll stay at the pub for the whole
Sounds
night.
like I'm getting more Port games in than you are at the moment, mate. I was there for the full 4 quarters against Sydney, and I watched this full game on the TV screen. I didn't make my way down to the Oval, albeit, whilst a great Port win, was not a great game of football as a spectacle, as a neutral. So.
That's what we figured. We were at the Gilbert Street Hotel, for those who haven't been there before in Adelaide. It's probably one of the best craft beer pubs, up there with a few others, but so we... there's fresh kegs just been put on. We're eating, we had they do the buffalo fried chicken wings. And I think it's pretty cheap you can buy a kilo at a time. So, we're just sitting there smashing wings and drinking beers, and then the footy was on the TV, so we thought, why leave?
Fresh kegs right for the keeper league. Exactly. You're on the way.
Exactly. All right, but let's get into the review, the Port versus Carlton game. Joe Richards is the first one I'm going to talk about. 86 points. He's probably too good for the podcast now. He's had 3 weeks in a row. Do you have anything you want to put this down to, this bump in scoring?
I don't know. It's a really interesting one, actually. I have been watching the Port game style, which you can probably talk to a little bit more than myself. I think he's definitely getting involved a lot more. It's noticeable as a neutral. I probably didn't see much of him in the first half of the season, whether that was because I wasn't watching Port games. I can't put it down to that. But certainly the last few weeks, and particularly live, I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed seeing... I don't know if it's just him finding his spot in the Port side and how they can use him in the most effective way, but he's clearly more and more part of the game plan.
I think that's definitely a factor. Aaron Bryans was saying the other week, he noticed that Port had been playing a much more, they were very handball happy at the start of the year, and they're very much now like a mark kick type game as well. And he's kind of rolling up to that kind of half forward, like high half forward role. Probably gets involved in a few extra plus sixes, I think, going into the forward 50 as well. So, and it's just, and I think what you said as well, like, just seems comfortable and actually kind of looks like, I know it was all draft capital and there was 3 or 4 things thrown in, but it felt for Port supporters that giving up this year's first rounder and losing Houston and only getting Lukosius back of Joe Berry and Joe Richards in was a bit of a waste. But it might be looking a little bit better now. Joe Richards
I liked the trade at the time, and not as a Port supporter, obviously. But
I felt like we're just missing a first rounder out of that. They should have been one extra bit in there.
Look, as someone who's lost Dunkley and Bailey Smith for peanuts in the past few years, I think the Houston trade looked a little bit more juicy. But I always thought Richards was talented. It was always going to be how does he fit in, and it seems like he's found that part to play. He's obviously got age on his side, so really good opportunity for anyone who doesn't have him, or at least to value him higher than they may have first few weeks of the year.
Travis Boak was back in the side, 74 points he scored. What do you make of his game, and do you reckon he holds his spot?
Well, I just talked about having age on your side, and I think Travis Boak, unfortunately, is the complete other end of the spectrum.
When I think he goes, I think he brings the average age of the club down by about 5 years, I think. So.
I wouldn't surprise. Well, I think someone say Carlton had the oldest team in history or at least since early 1900s on Thursday night. I don't know if that was true, but I was looking into the stats. Someone look into that and fact check that for me. It was in a group chat, so it could have been completely false.
Could have been taking the piss.
Yeah, absolutely. But nonetheless, obviously Boakey, he's just a talented footballer, right? You see some footballers are ageless. He's certainly not going to be on the improve. I think he's good enough. I think he adds something to the Port side, and I think leadership, officially or unofficially, you have to represent what that looks like to the team. So look, I don't know that he definitely does or definitely doesn't. If it was me, I'd be playing him. It really just depends. Does Port think there's any chance to make anything out of this year? And also, how highly do you view Boakey in the sense of, are you going to go fully kids, or are you really going to make sure he finishes his legacy in the side? Which I'd like to say it's the latter, but
it's an interesting one because he's not going to get a milestone in. I think he's played, was it 300th already, I think, or 350th even. I can't remember what it was, but I don't think he's going to get to that next milestone. He's been playing a lot of SNFL footy. To me, he was a fine scorer, and you're right. He does bring that leadership, quality in spades. But he just looks like sometimes he's just running in quicksand. And there was a chain where it was just handball, missed the target, handball, missed the target, and looked like really struggling to keep up with the pace of the game. So the point I'm trying to say is, if he's playing, he's probably going to get you a 70 as a forward type thing. It's just that I wouldn't be relying on him to be there each week for you, perhaps.
He's the kind of guy who's got no capital on him. He's probably drafted. If you've got him and his name, put him on your field. I don't think you've got to question it. Otherwise, you've just got to ride the lows.
I guess the other thing is Ollie Wines as well. When he comes back, I think that's changed into a TBC with him, so I'm not really sure what the go is there. So, we might see him for a bit longer. We might not. Who knows? For Carlton, there's not a lot to talk about. They were pretty poor. I think the only thing to note was Cooper Lord got taken out of the CBAs first up after being highly up in them last week, and then got some more in the second half. So it's just a roll watch for Cooper Lord, but it's not leading to good scoring anyway, so who cares?
I think the Blues board came out and said about the 8 weeks, they kind of weren't committing to Voss, but they were suggesting that he's got the remainder of this year to show something. I guess in terms of having an immediate change and either blooding the kids or making a significant change in structure, I don't think you're banking on it happening this year. You almost have to wait till the off-season. It's
an interesting one because every club's kind of moving towards longevity, holding, I can't even think of the right word, but there is a right, stability, sorry, is the word I'm thinking of. So everyone's kind of the new buzzword is stability, but they also say as well that there's just no coaches out there. I don't know how much I subscribe to that because I think some of the best coaches have kind of come from left field, or just they're not left field, but when someone retires, you always get for example, I wanted to get rid of Ken Hinkley for years, but you always get who are you going to replace him with? But when Collingwood lost Buckley, no one was saying Craig McRae's definitely the guy who's going to come in. When Sanderson left the Bulldogs, no one's going to go. Bevo's definitely going to be the next guy in. All that sort of thing. When Leon Cameron left, no one's like Adam Kingsley definitely the next guy who's going to come in. You kind of have a look around, see what's out there, find an assistant with some experience, and bring them in.
Yep.
So I don't know, but it's probably. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing for Voss. I guess he's going to have to try to win some games. So I guess it's going to be good for some Carlton players to actually just if you're worried about Doc getting dropped or you're worried about Blake Acres, I know he got injured on the weekend, but on the week, So if you're worried about those guys getting dropped, maybe he keeps playing them because he wants their stronger side in there, and maybe it is good for some stability of some of the players there as well.
Agreed.
Anyways, let's get on to the Sydney Swans versus your Doggies. Good win. Happy with this one?
Oh, this was more of an edge of the seat kind of for the whole game.
It was a good game for a neutral.
I was about to say, it kind of had air of the 2016 granny to it, like bit of swings, bit of roundabouts. Sydney kicks 5 in a row, and then we force our way 3 back. Joel Fraser, I know he's not on the list to talk about, but far out.
He's far too G for P.
Yeah, he is absolutely far too good. But it's some real excitement as a fan. And
do you think with Fraser though, there's a bit of a gap between his hype in the real fantasy world and the fantasy world? Like, he's not scoring, like, I know he had a big 112 or whatever was on the weekend, but the week prior he could barely get a kick against Richmond. So it was like, and I know the roles shift around a bit and they mixed up the midfield a bit, but like, I feel like he's been not quite. It's one of the few players, like most people have hype in fantasy and not in real life, but I think he's got the real life hype, but not quite the fantasy hype just yet.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's too much of a Mr. Fix-It, can do too many. Like, we kicked 3 1/4 to really keep us in that game and kind of create the momentum into the last, but he's also just as good as a distributor. He pushes into stoppage. He does a bit of everything, which is not good in a fantasy sense because he's not locking down a specific role. That's the issue I perceive with him. But again, as a real footy sense, so stoked to have a man like that on our list. Mini Bont, truly.
Baby Bont.
Baby Bont, Mini Bont, whatever they want to go with, well and truly.
Given that he hasn't, he's 19 and he's only played, I think under 30 games at the moment. Yep. What do you see him as a position-wise next year? Because he's only 25% CBAs and he's not sitting on the bench for that much of the game, but the thing is he sometimes starts back, sometimes starts forward.
Oh, he pushes into the contest from somewhere. Yeah. I've seen it centre half forward for weeks.
It feels like forward for the last few weeks.
Yeah, I wish I could actually delineate what that looks like. I'd be so intrigued to see what happens with Treloar at the end of this year.
Yeah.
And I think Libba will be there another year or two yet, but I think those two, it's going to really change the mix.
Yeah. Do you think there's any chance of forward status for next year for Joel Fraser?
He's starting the CBAs there far more often than not.
Well, they only had 9% of the CBAs actually starting at the centre bounce. So it's whether he's starting back or forward.
Yeah.
And if he's starting that 35% in one of them. Because, he could be 30% back, 30% forward, 30% midfield for the season.
Can we get the triple position change?
Well, if you're playing keeper, you can. But I don't think my league would buy that just to give me forward status for Joel Fraser, unfortunately. Anyways, let's stop talking about too good for the podcast players. Let's talk about some Sydney Swans. Jake Lloyd, 116 points. He probably is too good because he's averaging over 80. But I guess if you're getting dropped, the week prior, you're probably not in the best fantasy shape or the best shape for being a reliable contributor to your teams. I don't know. What do you make of his game? It was a huge score, but I kind of felt like he didn't play all that well. There was a huge first quarter where he went forward and had 3 shots at goal, and I think kicked one of them. Then he went completely missing in quarter 2. I think it was -3 in the second quarter, and then put up a 50-something second half type thing. So I don't know. I'm an owner, and I'm still very nervous on Jake Lloyd. What do you think?
What I would say just more broadly is you look at the players who scored a ton in this game, and you've got a Lockie Bramble, you've got a Jake Lloyd, you've got an Aaron Norton, and you see them in games, regularly where players you don't expect to get them. But you've also got a Papley 91. Meanwhile, you've got a Bont 72, a Richard 64, a Callum Mills 67. I don't think you can use this game to really benchmark a lot. I like him. I don't like him that much. I think he's probably an 80s guy. Yeah. This is the pop score, and I don't think this game is a benchmark for this team will do this against other teams. It was such a lightning. I don't think I've seen teams score as quickly as we saw that on the weekend.
I'm not even concerned about fantasy scoring. If he plays, he scores. My concern is, does Jake Lloyd hold his spot in the side for Sydney? I know they had McCartan out, but then Rampy got injured. I think someone else got concussed as well in this game that was out early as well. So he may just hold on through injuries.
I think he's good enough. I think he's best 22. It really depends, similar to the Port answer. Sydney's one of those few teams that there is a chance they can make something out of this year, especially with Golden back. Yeah. But is that enough?
Yeah.
I think it is, but I guess we'll wait and see.
Tom Papley had 91 points. He kicked a goal or two, I think, but he's just a handy streaming option to have now that he's back playing. as well. Then you mentioned Aaron Norton before, 121 points off 3 goals. What did you make of this? Like, Darcy kicked 3 goals, and I had Matty DeSena, shout out, messaging me quarter one. He's like, I've traded in Darcy, and I've made him captain, and he's on 50 at quarter time. And he's like, yeah, that's awesome, man, well done. And then, he didn't message me for the rest of the game. So.
He was my vice captain in Classics, so
Okay,
I can appreciate, hands down, that was a concern. Aaron Norton looks fantastic. It's the best game I've seen him play this year. He's not looked himself. They talked about dropping him to the 2s, and I genuinely thought it was a possibility.
Well, especially after last week as well.
Yeah. But the fact is, he clearly came out, albeit with an undermanned Sydney, but you still have to put the performance on, and he did. I'd actually feel excited if I was an owner for the rest of the year, just based on that performance. It feels like he's been unleashed a little bit, and he's back with a bit of confidence, which is exciting.
Yeah, he needs to, because, he was pretty putrid for a while there, and... he's always seen when Darcy goes big, he's just in the background doing nothing. So maybe that's the difference.
And I think when Darcy went down, he wasn't able to handle that number one mantra.
Yeah.
So now he's got the ability to be the second guy again.
Yeah.
Hopefully he gets enough of the ball.
And what the hell is going on with Lockie Bramble? So he buried me last week in fantasy, and he's got 104 this week. I'm getting text messages saying Lockie Bramble's now my father. So, what the heck's going on?
Honestly, it's something that I've been expecting. I actually picked him up late in almost all of my leagues. He takes the lion's share of the kick-ins, albeit I know that Sydney have been particularly wayward, even dropping Joel Amati, or injured, they've said.
Yeah.
That probably helps. I was just sorry.
Couldn't find a pair of new boots. I think that was the problem.
Yeah, interestingly, he only had the 2 kick-ins when typically he takes the lion's share of them as well.
Yeah, so he got even more. I think last week he killed me on the +6s, like those switches around half-back, that sort of stuff. So maybe just a few extra of those on the smaller ground.
I think so.
Let's just wait and see if he does it 3 weeks in a row. It'd be too good for the podcast next week if he does.
I don't think we could say that.
Yeah. Anyway, out of the Gold Coast Suns versus Melbourne. Brad Fiorini with the 9 points. It's pretty simple with Fiorini. Inside time, I think he had 9 CBAs. It's better scoring. Would you agree?
I think it's pretty... If he can play in the ones and play at the CBAs, you should have him. But the problem is he can't consistently do either of those things, which is a real concern.
Yeah. He's had back-to-back weeks, though, where he's got them, though. And then Sam Flanders was one Geordie and I spoke about at length last week. We basically said he looked like he was playing, he just looked refreshed, and he looked like he was playing further, like a higher half forward role. Only had the 1 centre bounce attendance, but it's positive signs because that's the first centre bounce attendance he's had in 3 weeks, 3 matches, as well. So I don't know. Do you trust Sam Flanders going forward?
It's such a broad question, isn't it? Because people that had him at the start of this year or end of last year would have been stoked, and they have seen absolutely nothing but poor scores for 15 weeks now.
I think I took him in the 3rd round of the Shiva draft.
Right.
Yeah.
He's trending upwards. I think there's absolutely the case that he's building more and more into it. The hardest part is that's still so far below where you had him 16 weeks ago. It's not funny.
Yeah.
So I think you'd be excited as an owner, but you probably wouldn't. You probably could be looking to trade in if you were looking at someone and the owner was buying or selling low, I should say, if they still were pretty disappointed with how far away he's dropped. You might be able to get him as a bit of a steal.
And he's probably going to have forward status next year as well, which is going to be pretty sweet for the owners out there that do have the patience with him. Bailey Humphrey, the Hump Daddy, 68 points, but subbed off at 3/4 time. So annoying. He was due for another big score. Did cop a knock early, but I don't think it really affected him because I think he kicked the goal straight after it happened. So, just an annoying one there. So hopefully he can get back into it next week. And then for Melbourne, their forward structure is just so very weird. Who knows? Jake Melksham was their top goal scorer. What do you have? 6 behinds, 5 goals. It could have been 11 goals if he kicked straight. Hard to score, when you kick 5 goals and take 8 marks, and you're only scoring 128, it probably doesn't bode well for future scoring for someone like Jake Melksham, does it?
No, I mean, when I looked at this game maybe at halftime, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, this is trending kind of relatively standard. I had Matt Rowell and a couple of other guys.
Yeah.
And then I think 3/4 time, Jake Melksham suddenly 30 points clear or 20 points clear. And then the last quarter, he only pushed it even further. So, he's not a name I've actually paid any attention to. I like to think I keep an eye on some of the lesser knowns, and Jake Melksham has not come up one time.
I think some people genuinely forgot he still existed.
I think I'm one of those people, to be honest.
Before he came back in the side, I reckon many people thought he retired. But anyway, tip of the cap to Jake Melksham. This isn't scoring stuff, but just a few role things. Like Ed Langdon, you got to feel sorry for the owners now. He's just a tagger. He was such a solid wingman for so long. And now he just seems to be, like, every time he gets a tagging role, he seems to struggle to score now. So
yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, such a gun and such a jet. Clearly, just in terms of fitness, it works, but it also works to then just hassle your opponent for the entire game. So a bit of a shame. He still finds the weeks, though. You find the
every
right
now and then,
matchups, he will have an absolute pop score.
yeah, exactly. And then Harvey Langford spent a bit of time in defence, which I thought was interesting. Only had the 53 points, but Howes and Petty got injured, so that was probably more to do with it than anything, just necessity in the game.
Absolutely.
So don't read into it too much just yet. To the Hawthorn versus North Melbourne game. I think Jack Gunston could be the pickup of the year in some leagues. So this is how he got picked up in our league. So he was undrafted in our league, but we have ad drops after round 6, 12 and 18.
Okay.
And so one of the better fantasy players had a rough start to the game, rough start to the season. And he picked up Jack Gunston with his first pick in the ad drop period. And now that guy's sitting top 4 and has like a 75 average forward that he basically got for nothing, really. So, yeah, one of the better pickups. 100 points, 7 goals in this game. There was talk earlier in the season that he was going to battle to keep his spot, but it hasn't happened yet. Mitch Lewis and Culture Deer now playing VFL. What do you feel? Do you think Jack Gunston's safe, and can he continue the scoring if someone like Mitch Lewis comes back into the side?
Oh, without a doubt. I think if Mitch Lewis comes back in, it's always going to impact. But we just talked about it with Darcy and Norton. You become less of a target, and sometimes you get the ability to go off the chain even more. So I remember looking at Gunston at round 8 or 9, and he just put up his 5th consecutive 80 plus. I think he'd scored 3, kicked 3, 5 consecutive weeks. And if you actually take out the last month, I think he's averaging mid-80s. So the last month prior to today, I think this weekend, he scored 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's averaging 75 after that performance probably suggests how well he started the year.
Yeah.
I guess he's been trending downwards. He's obviously had a great week. Hopeful he can continue that, because we've seen the downs are down.
Yeah, that's true.
A very unironic sentence. The downs are down.
But that said, like, so many forwards are like that this year. I think everyone's probably fielding one forward, even like the best teams out there. Everyone's probably fielding a forward that they don't feel comfortable fielding.
True.
Like, I got Bailey Humphrey out there, who can just easily drop like a 50 every now and then. I think because I've got Brent Daniels as well, I'm currently fielding either one of Sam Powell-Pepper or Tex Walker each week. And, luckily for me, Sam Powell-Pepper's been good, but then this week he just drops a 41. Like, we've all kind of got one, I think, that can kind of hurt you. And if he's that guy, then you're going to have a few highs with it as well.
My keeper league keeper, as in the app.
Yeah.
My keeper. I think they've dropped the 5th forward for utility, which bothered me a little bit, because I was the guy that had a really strong core of forwards, and everyone else was struggling at F4, F5.
Yeah.
So now we've swapped it to a utility. It feels a bit cheap, because you're right.
Next week, next year, the commissioner will be lacking a defender, and you'll drop one of them. See what happens then. Anyway, maybe a Chol, probably the tip of the cap there, but 97 points, 5 goals. North Melbourne factor as well, that plays in, because Ramsden kicked 3 as well. Interesting, Cam McKenzie came back into the side, 76 points. No Warple back this week, though, so I don't know. Do you think he holds after this week?
It's a hard one, isn't it? At the start of the year, I would have said yes.
Yeah, he's just fallen out of favour, hasn't he?
It just seems like something's changed there. Nothing obvious from me. He looks good when he plays.
Yeah.
I just wonder if it's the mix or if it's just the expectations outside of the game. But a tough one, really tough one. I think he's right on the cusp.
I just don't know who else you drop to bring Warple back in. If they do bring Warple back in, I don't know. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they would. But then Nick Larkey onto the Roos, 5 goals, but only got to 99 points. So that's probably a tip of the cap. But if North ever get better, he'll be better.
He might be one of the wasted talents. Besides his impressions, which I think are absolute class, he has been a very good forward and perennially underrated due to the side he plays for.
Yeah, 100%. If he was in a better side, he'd be a gunner. And if they get better, he'll be better as well. Yeah. I just want to give a shout out to Luke Parker. He's too good for the podcast, but had an awesome month, 94 points on the weekend. Wardlaw's been subbed out 2 weeks in a row, which I think has given him a bit of a midfield bump. But even before that, he's been going pretty well. So, yeah, I think they're kind of relying on him a bit more in there, just a bit of a senior head. I think they trialled a few of the younger ones there for a while and played him a lot more forward, which is probably going to be good for his forward status next year. But yeah, now he's back in the guts again and he's playing pretty well, so it's nice to see. Onto actually wasn't too bad, the Collingwood versus West Coast game on Saturday night.
I didn't see the first quarter, and I logged in at quarter time, and it's a bit of a shock to the system. That was not a surprise.
They were winning at halftime, which is mental.
Yeah.
Collingwood side of things, Patrick Lipinski, we talked about him last week. We mentioned his role change. He's not really on the wing anymore like he was at the start of the year. He's pretty much playing full-time forward because I don't think he had a centre-bounce attendance either. So even though he's put 2 good scores in a row, there's some West Coast factor to this one, I think.
There is, I think you might have heard this story. Urban, in our Hat Chat keeper, second pick of the redraft, he's picked Paddy Lipinski. Purely by accident. The last 3 weeks in the group chat, I've heard nothing but, last 3 games.
How good's Paddy Lipinski?
You guys were joking. How's your first round draft pick gone? Again, former dog, always a star. It's the role which clearly is inconsistent. And if he gets to the role, he scores well. I don't think he'll ever be top tier though, unfortunately.
I think he's going to be, I don't know, I think he could improve slightly after Pendlebury side bottom, all that are gone. Might get a bit more midfield time then, but they'll likely replace it with a quality youngster anyway.
You would think so.
Yeah. Then on to the West Coast, probably a bit more relevant. Tom McCarthy. Can we make him too good for the podcast after 2 games?
Yeah, 100%. It's been fantastic watching him. Obviously fantastic in Classic. And I think I've seen a couple of leagues that, unfortunately, I missed the boat pretty early. People went early and well done to those that did. Yeah,
well, in the keeper stuff we've done, he went and pretty much picked one in all the mid-season drafts that I did. And I thought it might be a bit wasted because like mid-season draftees can be hit or miss when they do come to the big time. And because I hadn't really watched him that closely, I had looked at it. He did have the best fantasy scoring in the pool from that draft pool. So probably makes sense there. But yeah, like the halfback role looks nice there. It's like he didn't use the footy as well as he did last week, but it's still a lot of improvement on, say, someone like Tyrell Dewar, who was out this week with hamstring, I think. And that kind of caused Marek to move back onto halfback as well, who scored well too. So a few good things there for West Coast people that own those West Coast players to have them. But I think Tom McCarthy can just about be too good for the podcast. You're the classic guy. I probably could bring another primo defender in this week, but should I just be playing McCarthy on field because I've got him there?
Depends who you're trading out as the alternative.
I don't have a lot of cash, so it'd just be downgrading someone. And I'd probably Sinclair would be like the guy I'd have to think about. Yeah,
I'm considering trading Sinclair myself. Yeah. I like the idea of the McCarthy loop with like a Mills at D6. I think that's what a lot of teams kind of have.
I'm thinking Sinclair to Flanders. Backing that in.
I'm not backing that in, I can say that. No, I think he's absolutely worth being there for the loop. I think he could be good enough. It's just, are you actually improving your team on the other side of it?
Yeah.
And bringing in Sam Flanders, you're not. So that's probably what I would say.
I just need some cash. That's the issue. Let's go on to Brady Heff. 93 points. I've got written the Brayshaw here. They didn't even play Brayshaw. Went to Dacos, sorry. But yeah, it didn't tag. That's the thing. So actually looked pretty like a quality player in this game. Like, I don't know. It's like he flicked a switch and he's like, yeah, I'm a competent footballer now. I can win a hard ball and hit a handpass and, win a kick and take a mark and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know. Like every time he does something like this, I'll field him next week and he'll score me, Actually, what he does, I'll field him next week. He'll have 30 points in the first quarter and go, oh, we're on here. And he'll score 10 more points for the rest of the game.
Okay, so I do tease you a little bit. Actually, Brady Heff is a similar vein to me as Joel Frazier. I'm not saying he's as good, but he's the kind of guy I've really liked since day one. There's something that I really think he is fantastic. But at the same time, he clearly becomes a Mr. Fixer. He's played a bit of a lockdown, medium-sized defender before. He's played as more of a rebounding guy, and then he's played in the midfield as well, and you don't know what you're going to get on any given week. He's clearly not having a consistent role. He's tagging at times, as you already mentioned.
He's always in that midfield, but it's what he's doing in that midfield.
Yep.
But even when he's not tagging, like he just sometimes just becomes allergic to the pill.
Yep. So he's a defensive-minded midfielder, and we know that role can be a bit of a yo-yo, and that's his problem.
Yeah, it'd be good if he's just a bit more consistent while he has defender status. But anyway, Jack Hutchison, 89 points, hasn't had a lot of good scores since moving to the wing. I think he's had 3 80-pluses this season and played pretty much every week, so I'm not trusting it. I'm tipping the cap still to that one. But good game against the top team in the competition. Let's move on to the Sunday, the last 2 games of the round. Dion Presti is probably too good for the podcast, but I picked him up off the waivers in the Shiva League a few weeks ago, and I'm pretty happy that I did. So
yeah, I must admit, this is the one game of the weekend I didn't see, and I thought it was such an interesting one for scores. You started seeing guys like Dion Presti and Wayne Malira, and I was like, gosh, are we in 2025 or are we somewhere else? Talented guy. If he can keep his body right.
Yeah, it's all body. It's all injuries. Yeah.
If he's late and you're dropping someone that you're probably not keeping into the next year, well, you may as well take the upside of the pick, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think so. So, I think also as well, like just Dow and Thompson Dow and Kane McAuliffe has gotten injured at the right time just as he's come back as well. So it's really opened up a midfield spot. But they've also just started benching Camden McIntosh for sub as well. So they've kind of clearly opened a hole for him to get back in there and start scoring well. So I think there's positive signs there for people who have picked him up. Wayne... Oh, sorry, we'll move on to the Crows. Actually, we'll move on to Wayne Miller next. I had him in my streamers of the week, and I put 4 up on the website. I put 5 up on the website usually, but because it's buys, I'm struggling to find good ones because there's less teams. So I've only been putting 4 up this week. So
it's not an homage to DC's last 4 that he's trying to get over the line. It's not last 5 anymore. He wants the last 4.
No. Sorry, just go down to 4 during the buy rounds. That's all it is. So it's easy to find players. But the other 2 I had Lob. And I had, who was the other one? I had it was another dog, Sam Davidson, because Sydney were the easiest team for wingers to score against, and they both got like 40. So I was like, I needed to hit one here, and Wayne Miller puts up 111 for me as the streamer. So happy with that. Purely just because Richmond is a super easy matchup for halfback flanks. So I guess the point is less to do with Miller and just more to do with halfbacks against Richmond. Just keep fielding them, keep streaming them because they score well.
That's it. Matchups are important, especially for streamers more than any other position. It's where you're picking a key forward. You're not going to do it against the Pies, but you're probably going to do it against North Melbourne, the Tigers, or the Eagles. Yeah,
correct. And the other one's Dan Curtin. So at the start of the year, this will always stick out to me. Like there was a question put up there where with Dan Curtin or Jasper Fletcher, who would you choose? And I said Jasper Fletcher. Because I don't see Dan Curtin actually getting a role that is fantasy friendly. Now, I know he played the midfield role in that one carnival. It wasn't even as a junior. He played it for 4 games in his life type thing. And so everyone, I think, feel like expect him to come back to the midfielder. But from what I've seen in the last month, I'm starting to change my tune about Dan Curtin. He had 118 points on the weekend, didn't have a centre bounce attendance, and played on the wing for the whole game. And it's not a great role for scoring, but he just kind of looks like he's kind of just turned a bit of a page, I think, in the last few weeks. I think the reason why I like him so much right now is because he's got forward status. Yep. If he keeps playing wing, becomes mid-only next season, I'm not sure if I like him as much.
It's kind of, in a very obvious relation, like Lockie Shoal the last couple of years. You see weeks that he's just dropping 90, 95 averages over a month and then goes nowhere. I think Curtin's a far better footballer than that, but that's that wing role at the Crows. Yeah. And I agree. Mid-only wingers make it really hard to pick. Yeah. They're never going to be sitting there at the top of the line. They're just going to sit somewhere in the middle. Yeah. But I like him. I still probably lean Jasper, but you'd be pretty happy as a Crows fan.
I'll be very excited if he ever starts to get CBAs. Then I'll be like, yep, all right, I was wrong. That's when it kind of, he's probably going to be a gun fantasy player from there. Anyway, and then Sam Berry had 89 points. What do you think of him as not really beyond this year, but for the rest of this year as a prospect? Like if he was sitting on a waiver pool or you could get him in a good deal and trade, was he someone you'd target? Or do you think like Crouch will come back in and hurt him eventually or what?
I think the Crows made it pretty clear at the start of the year and even last year. I know I traded for him 2 years ago and what a disaster that's been. If he's on your waivers, I think it's worth a play. I don't know that I'd be trading anything of any value for him, though. I still think the Crouch comes back in and he becomes that Mr. Fix-It when they need a
maybe back to the sub-best for a bit.
Yeah, he clearly has a penchant for that. They like him there. I don't know if he gets moved on at all, or do you think any clubs are going to have any interest in him in the off-season?
If there's weak midfields out there, they're like, I think like someone like West Coast would take him every day of the week. But like, I don't know if they'd actually get rid of him, especially because Crouch probably does get on with his career a bit more and they might have a bit more use for him going forward. But
how much longer if you're Sam Berry do you sit around playing, you had an excellent season 2023 and then you just get parked for 2 years?
I think whenever your contract's up, you're asking questions. Yeah. I think so, yeah. And then Max Michaelini, just a role change thing, 60 points. He had like a forward defensive kind of job, and then ended up kicking 3 goals on the back of it. So
clearly a good footballer. I don't know I'd expect this to be consistent, but I'd probably be keeping an eye on it if I was an owner. That's a bit of an odd one is what I would expect.
No. Anything against Richmond I never take seriously. So move on to next week and see what happens.
Yeah. No Tom Lynch on the show tonight? Or?
No, I don't think he'll be featuring in AFL for a while. God, that was pretty funny to see. But anyway, then Fremantle versus St Kilda. Didn't see much of this game. Had to go out for dinner. But the question I want to ask, another too good for the podcast player, but Luke Jackson, is he getting forward status again next year? Because my thinking is there's going to be a lot of leagues out there that play one ruck and they've probably got someone else good in their ruck. Like, so example in our league, the guy who owns Jackson has got Max Gawn in the ruck and he's got Luke Jackson the forward line, but I don't think he's getting enough forward time to starting there at least anyway to actually maintain the forward status next season.
I think the problem that we've seen as well is even when he's not in the ruck, he's kind of playing as a midfielder.
That's what I mean.
So the forward time is down on both ends. Obviously, Sean Darcy not being there means more ruck time plus more midfield time. I think, I was going to say pre-buys, I think he was almost exclusively CBAs, obviously without Darcy in the side.
He's averaging 75% CBAs this season and hasn't had a game under 60%.
Yep.
Or one game under 6%, or two, whatever. But my point still stands. Like, there's no way. You can't not have. Yeah, you're losing forward. So whoever owns him, like, you've got to do something if you've got a good ruck.
I think you're either running it for the year, take your tilt at the flag. If you're not having a tilt at the flag,
you've got to move one of them on.
Yep.
Yeah. So otherwise, you got your keep. Especially our league, we keep 12. That means you're down to 11 keepers because you have to have one of these guys on the bench next season. It's pretty interesting. To see what people do there.
Utility, would you still hold and run the two?
Yeah. If you've got utilities, 100%. Yeah. I definitely won't be adding utilities in our league. But anyway, Neil Erasmus, 88 points. Started forward, then rolled in. Like, from what I saw this morning, I watched just a little bit of the mini. It seemed like he was in the midfield a lot, but only had the 5 CBA. So I think he's rolling in from the half forward flank. And I think he's just looking more comfortable at the level. I'm just still a bit worried when someone like Hayden Young's fit and firing.
I think they showed at the start of the year, again, we talk about guys who are like sitting right on 22. I think Neil Erasmus is that guy. Yeah. He is so much on the cusp with injuries. He comes in and has a good role. As soon as the team is fully fit, he is right. He's either going to play as a forward, I think, or he's not going to be playing at all, and neither is exciting.
I think he's probably a good prospect for this season, though. If you own him, he's got forward status. Like, it might be for an F5. Like, that's the kind of range he'd be if he was in my team.
Absolutely.
And I think he'd be a pretty good prospect for that. So
agreed.
Yeah. And then Max Hall's probably a tip of the cap, but 88 points, took 6 marks, had 6 tackles in the forward line, and then kicked a goal. Just, if he does it consistently, I'll have a look at it, but not.
Is he a mature ager?
I think so.
Because he's come in and looked excellent again on a football level.
Yeah.
Clearly solidified himself in that side. It's just not always a fantasy-friendly role.
Yeah, correct. All right, let's get into a few questions that we've got here. Putting a few out on Instagram these days and getting quite a few back, which has been good. Richie N5 wants to know, a team in my league just traded Darcy Jones and Harry Morrison for a mid-table 2027 first rounder. So that's 2 years' time. So do you basically the question is, I guess it kind of depends on how many keepers they have each year, but in 2 years' time, do you see Darcy Jones or Harry Morrison? Like, Harry Morrison, definitely not. He's been around. He was on the first season of this podcast. Kays was talking up Harry Morrison, which I think was 2018. So he's been around for that long and it hasn't really popped. So probably safely Harry Morrison's not going to pop by 2027. Darcy Jones is an interesting prospect. Like, he does look flashy, but I just don't see him as a full-time mid ever, and I don't see him being anything other than a kind of... It's like, glimpses like in the midfield, but I don't know if it's worth a first rounder, depending on how many you keep, really.
I think it's... Unfortunately, I hate to be team-dependent like every fantasy podcast out there, but the reality is if you're keeping 15, it's a very different answer to if you're keeping 10. Because if you're keeping 10, I'd say, the person who's brought in the mid-table first has definitely got the win.
Yeah.
If you're keeping 15 like I do in my leagues, I actually like the trade. I think Darcy Jones, especially in a couple of years' time, especially if you're thin in the forwards, I think that's a reasonable trade to make. Yeah,
I'm still probably leaning towards the first rounder on the back. Gee, if I'm doing it in my league, because I guess anyone who asks a question like this, maybe give how many keepers, how many teams, that makes it way more easy for us to kind of digest and work out. But in my league, like, he wouldn't even be making my best 12 at the end of the year. Darcy Jones wouldn't be close to it.
No, I think 12 or less keepers, I think you're absolutely stoked with the pick.
Yeah.
Anything more, it starts to swing further and further in the favour to Darcy Jones.
Yep. Boddington 11 goes, how do you rate Tyrell Dewar's long-term role in scoring? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we saw for the first half of the year a bunch of 20s and 30s. I think a couple of those in full games.
Well, he was on the wing a lot more. But the thing, the last 2 weeks, he shifted to half-back and put up some monsters. But the disposal efficiency has been putrid.
Yep. Tom McCarthy in properly now and clearly taking that role. What's
kind of happened is Marek and Dewar have swapped for the last 2 weeks for whatever reason. They've kind of swapped them around. But then this week we saw Marek go back to half-back and it looks so much better. So I fear for Tyrell Dewar.
I wouldn't be excited on any side of the coin here. I wouldn't be bringing him in. I wouldn't be happy if I had him.
There's a few classic people I think brought him in because of the low break even, or were thinking about it before he was out.
Yep.
But that's probably the only reason, and even now I wouldn't be doing it. Boddington 11 also says, tip of the cap to Tom Lynch, who was on 15, was it minus 15 at half time?
Minus 15, no touches, 5 free kicks against, and a suspension, I would suggest. So, fantastic half of football.
Big old knuckle sandwich to the back of, was it Worrell's head? Can't remember.
A Butsy, I think.
A Butsy's, that's one. Yeah. Ash Walsh wants to know, rank the best under 75 games players and rank some that are still available. So I'm not sure if Walshy knows how rankings work, but you can't rank the best and then rank some that are still available, like in the same thing. But I've kind of done it two separately. So I've just I went through keeper, just looked at the games tally. The players that I reckon the best are under 75 games are Sheasel, obviously. Yep. Tristan Sherry, I don't know if that counts. Like, 'cause there's rucks in there. Like Meekie's the same, under 75, but they're old.
Yep.
So, but they're young. They're young compared to other rucks. So
it meets the criteria that's set by Ash. So
Will Ashcroft up there, Finn Callahan, Will Day. I'm still having up there, even though the injury concerns are concerning for everyone. Colin McKercher. Archie Roberts is so surprising. Not surprising if you watched him last season, but it was more like, will he hold on to that, or will he, you play 4 games, average 80, and you're like, that's just like a good start to the, a good end to the season. You're getting all the kind of resources thrown at you because the season's over.
Yep.
Is it going to continue? But he has, with fairness.
I remember looking at round 3, I think he was in the teens doing the Rising Star, and I thought to myself, gosh, I reckon he's a bit of a smoky here.
Yeah.
And he's pretty well tightened in, very much a testament to how good he's been in that role this year.
Matty Roberts is still under 75. Tom McCarthy, obviously. They're the ones that kind of came to mind.
Yeah, Tom McCarthy is such an interesting one. 2 game hype, but he has looked great. Yeah. I don't know that I can compare him with Sheasel, Cherry and Ashcroft and Callahan, but I take the point nonetheless.
It's hard when you look at the filter by under 75 and he's sitting right at the top of the list, though, so you probably got to have him in there. Then some guys that might be available. Like, I know Josh Worrell's like, they're talking all Australian with him, like in that kind of conversation.
Is it just the Crows fans? Like, don't get me wrong. He's looked great. And I think someone said it to me the other day. He looks so good because we didn't expect him to be so good.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
But my point is he's probably slipped in drafts out there. Like if you play no waivers or whatever, he's probably available out there. So he's someone that might be still available. Jasper Fletcher's another one I think might be still available out there. And the other guys I like that kind of haven't really come on just yet. But I think Kay McAuliffe, I think one day is going to be a good, 80 to 90 type midfielder. I think Darcy Wilson's actually going to be a star. He's just struggled to start off with as well.
Yep.
Elijah Sardis is another one. If he can get a trade, I reckon he could break out somewhere. He just needs to actually get a game somewhere.
He feels like the kind of guy that would just rack up.
Yeah, well, he's doing it in the twos.
Just destroy the disposal stat line. Yeah. Unfortunately, the role that Essendon kind of want him to play, there's a couple of other guys that just do it better.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think he needs to go somewhere where they're struggling for mids and he can get a game in that role. So, that's probably a few there on the list. But anyway, and then last question is at Cooper's Reds. Is that the sparkling ale, the Cooper's Reds? Anyway, thoughts on Alex Taru. Has the media hype, but my eyes are telling me he's going to be good, especially in Supercoach in his early years. He's not owned currently in Supercoach Keeper. I'm playing him currently on the hunt for a premiership, so do I drop someone on the fringes to stash him? Probably fantasy-wise, to ask for Supercoach, I'm not as hot on fantasy, but they're talking about something like he's got a 6-second leap. Like he can stay in the air for 6 seconds. I don't know if that's even fathomable. That
doesn't sound right, but I'm not going to...
that. I'm going to Google that right now. Alex Tauru. 6-second leap. Let's see.
You're just making things up, but
maybe set of clubs. Maybe they meant they made something like 60 centimeters or something like that, and they said it wrong. But yeah, I swear I heard that. The Flying Viking, they call him.
I was going to say the Flying Viking. He, you know what? After watching that game on the weekend, I'd be stashing him. I mean, albeit I'm not necessarily in the hunt for a flag, the question that comes to mind is who would you be dropping for him? But I think he looks excellent. He was fantastic on the weekend, and he genuinely does look like a star. Not to overhype him here. The role isn't incredibly fantasy friendly, but far out. He looks elite.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to give up someone of little to no capital and little to no benefit to your flag, I'd be doing it. At the same token, if you're going for a flag, I don't know that he contributes this year, and you don't want to drop someone that could be an important piece of getting you that elusive trophy.
Now, the more I think about it, 6 seconds seems like ridiculous.
6 seconds is a crazy number.
But it does say here that he's got an It's just an incredible vertical leap. I think it was 94 centimeters or something like that.
I think it might have been the highest at the combine.
Yeah,
maybe?
something like that. So maybe that's what they were getting at, or they just misspoke or whatever. But yeah, or maybe my ears are just cooked. I don't know. Yeah, I do kind of agree. I think like in Supercoach especially, he's going to be like a player that I think will take a lot of like, just intercept marks, contested marks across that half back line, which will probably bode well, I think, for his scoring eventually. So, yeah, and get a few possessions on the back of that too. So, yeah.
I don't know if he's defender forward this year as well. I know he is in fantasy.
No, it'll be the same, I reckon.
Supercoach, but
champion data.
They're running the same numbers.
Yeah.
Handy as well at the very least. Just... I love having a defender forward.
Yeah.
Amazing what it does for your side. Just that 1 week that you need someone.
Yeah.
They're sitting there down at the 25th position on your side and they just sneak in an 18 scorer for you.
Yeah, don't mind that at all. Anyways, we might wrap it up there. So thanks so much, Jake, for coming on and helping us out. It's much easier when I got someone to talk to in this studio, I found. Doing the waiver wire bonus mini episodes by myself. It's much more, it flows a lot better when someone else is here.
I must admit, I talk plenty on the Hat Chat podcast, but I don't know how I could do it on my own. I think I need someone to bounce off of, so I'm glad I could help you out. But always fun. Always fun. Thank you, mate.
Thanks for that. And if you want to check out the Hat Chat podcast on all the podcast platforms, on Twitter, or X, I guess, these days. Are you still doing your live Wednesdays?
Still live Wednesdays. Yeah. I think we've missed one all year.
Yeah.
No, really exciting. I think we're hopeful we're going to have a pretty highly ranked classic guest this week. There's a little bit of a scoop tonight. If not, I didn't say that. I don't know where that came from. Something that was made up. But no, really exciting getting into the pointy end of the year. A couple of the boys are fighting for hats, and unsurprisingly, it's not me. So yeah, Hat Chat AFL and... looking forward to seeing how we go for the rest of the year.
Yeah, looking forward to that special guest as well. It should be pretty interesting to see. Get around our stuff at Keeper League Pod on all the socials. If you want to support the podcast and it's within your means to do so, please sign up as a member, and then make sure you're jumping on the Discord group, joining in the conversation and talking all things AFL Fantasy Draft and Keeper League there. Anyways, that wraps us up for another week. Thanks again, Jake, and we'll talk to everyone soon.